So yeah, my name's Abi. I am a women's movement coach, and my journey started out as I was a holistic masseuse and yoga teacher, but it never felt quite it. And then in 2016, a roller coaster of events occurred where I lost my 36-year-old cousin to a brain hemorrhage. I had a miscarriage on her funeral. My mum got skin cancer, and then my husband's oldest school friend died from a virus. And so, you know, when you can put your fake smile on for so long, and then after a while it just started to chip. And then me and my husband just weren't communicating, especially after we had the miscarriage. We was just pulling in the directions of how we communicated, you know, subconsciously, and that was just pulling us further and further apart. So I took myself to a movement camp in Miami for a month, and we was moving for 8 to 10 hours a day through various aspects of movement, martial arts, yoga, calisthenics. And whilst I was out there, my cycle became 28 days. And I was, oh my God, there was no cramping. I wasn't feeling premenstrual. So when I came back, I began exploring movement that went with your menstrual cycle, and going deeper and deeper into it. I studied with the Red School, you know, I was reading all these various books, and the magic that I found within the menstrual cycle was phenomenal. I realized where I could be more productive. I realized where my habits were, you know, rising up, and habits such as depending on alcohol, being so emotional and overwhelmed. And I began to put into place strategies to support myself. But then for me, movement being my kind of go-to thing, I realized that I could create a movement menu that would support me mentally, emotionally, and physically throughout the month. And I like to mix up my movement. But what I found is that if you had a specific goal, you could work on one type of movement and see better results from it. But for me, the biggest gem from this is that I realized my emotions are pretty cool, and that I didn't have to be overwhelmed by them, and I didn't have to be ashamed of them, because what your emotions are actually doing, they're trying to tell you something. They're trying to communicate with you. But where we've been told to suppress and push them down, and that to be socially acceptable, you don't tell people how you truly feel, or you don't express completely, you lose that communication, you lose that understanding. And so when an emotion arises, it's overwhelming, right? I don't know if you can resonate with that. All of a sudden, this feeling comes from nowhere, and you feel like you're losing control. As an example, I worked with a beautiful woman who had been told she was bipolar. And as we journeyed through the cycle, what she realized is that on the first day of her bleed, because she was so sensitive to estrogen, she'd be like, right, yes, amazing. And she'd be doing everything like she would do in her ovulation, where ovulation is a time where you've got all of these amazing hormones to support you. So you are more powerful in a sense. And she was doing that on the first day of her bleed, where really you think of all of those minerals that you're losing with your blood. It's a time when you really, if you can rest one day on your bleed, is the day. But she was powering through. So by the time she'd gone past ovulation, she was so tired. She had nothing to give physically, mentally, and emotionally. And so she would just feel so overwhelmed, and that she was failing. And I can resonate with that. You know, coming over to the flip side of your cycle in what we call the luteal phase, when your hormones begin to go down, it can feel like, oh my God, I'm failing. I'm rubbish at being a mum. I'm rubbish at my business. Everything's just going wrong. But it's not. It's actually a time that you should be resting. But this is exacerbated if we don't know to rest at the start of our menstrual cycle. And so to learn about your flow gives you more power as a woman. I mean, and we can all We can all do a bit of that, I think, don't you? So would you like me to explain and go deeper into my understanding and experience of the cycle and how it flows? Yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think that would be massively useful.
So we have menstruation, inner winter, which is your bleed. Now, your inner winter, the seasons, when I talk of the seasons, this comes from the Red School. So I'll start with the seasons first. Now, the inner winter, they see that starting just before your period, 1 or 2 days, going up into about day 5. But again, this is not exclusive. Everyone is different, right? And I love this because if you think about it, to come into your bleed, it's a beautiful thing to give yourself that slowing down, because as you enter your menstrual cycle, as you enter your bleed, you become quite detached. And I never forget experiencing this. All of a sudden, I don't know if you can resonate, it's like the world has kind of stopped. And you know, like there's this bubble and you try and reach out and it's like a different world around you. It's because you're detaching. All of your hormones are at their lowest. And so this is your time to kind of pull away. And this is the no, like, no, this is my time. I need to rest. So your inner winter is a time for you to really pull into your home, to not do things that are challenging or new or out of your comfort zone. When you come into your inner spring, so from inner winter, inner spring, this is when the hormones are starting to rise up. And as the name implies, spring, it's all about cherishing, delicate. I used to, because I'm an ovulation kind of girl, I used to just bypass that inner spring, that moment of cherishing, and to slowly come out. And I would see myself being quite tired around ovulation. Again, a time when you're in a summer when you are at your most vibrant. So your inner spring is this cultivating of energy, you know, being a bit playful, being a bit curious, but not throwing everything out straight away. Because a lot of women become overwhelmed at this time. You know, you're in your bleed, you've rested, you've looked after yourself, and if you're comfortable here, it can feel very uncomfortable to think, oh God, I've got to go out into the world. A bit like our isolation, you know, you talk about everyone feeling really comfortable being on their own. And so we want to cherish ourselves coming out of our bleed and in quite slow. So that as we begin to pick up pace at the end of our inner spring, we come into our inner summer, yeah? And this is where all of your hormones are thriving. They're at their peak, because this is where you want to ovulate, yeah? So you want to be out there looking for a mate. You want to be being more social, declaring yourself. You know, you have all of that power. You know, you are emotionally resilient. Someone can say something to you, and you're like, oh, okay, not a problem, fine. And then we come into our inner autumn. And for me, this was my challenge, because as I come into my inner autumn, roughly about day 20, 21 for me, that lowering of estrogen, I would feel quite sensitive to. And this is when I would feel oh gosh, I'm failing. This is not working. Nothing's going right. I would reach for the wine. And I wouldn't just reach for one glass of wine, I'd reach for a lot. Because what I realized when I started to look into my habits was my body. I used to work in the corporate world, and I used to be very social at that time. And my body realized that to slow me down, that's the only thing that I knew, because ovulation was my thing. I didn't want to go into my inner autumn. I wanted to stay out and keep declaring myself, but my body's saying, you've got to calm down, you've got to calm down. So I would reach for the wine. And that inner autumn is really a time of reflection and to sit with the inner critic. Now, I actually have a great relationship with my inner critic now. And a lot of people might call this the negative voice. But this is actually your ally. This is your hormones talking to you. And why we call it the negative voice is because generally we don't have enough time. We are so busy, yeah, and we don't realize what's going on. We don't realize we're in our luteal phase if we're not charting our menstrual cycle. And so all we hear is, oh, this is going to go so badly. You're going to get this completely wrong. This is going to be awful. So you think, oh, this is all me. This is all going to blow up in my face. But if you sit with your critic, what your critic was trying to tell you is, you're in a phase where you should be slowing down. This is not going to go as great as you want it to because you don't have the capacity right now. So why don't you put that on hold and just clean up what you've got going on? And then let's come into this again in the cycle and focus on it and get it completed at your ovulation. You're doing something at the wrong time. The inner critic is now your best friend, yeah? Because you realise you're at a time in your cycle when you don't need to be doing it. But that's so hard to comprehend when you are not aware of what's going on. So that's the flow of the more esoteric side of things when you're focusing on the inner seasons. Before I come into more hormonal stuff, does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. I hope I haven't stunned you all into silence. So now we look at the more, I say the research side of stuff, yeah? So from your bleed to ovulation, this is really the follicular. So you look at your cycle like a circle, yeah? So this is your follicular time. So from menstruation, your hormones are already gently starting to rise. So like I said, you might be quite sensitive to this, and bang, before bleed, there might be a big come down. And as soon as you bleed, I feel so much better. Yeah, that PMS, that tension might start to fall away. So you feel the hormones starting to rise. Now, in this side of your cycle, it's been shown that because of this rise of estrogen, we are able to build more muscle quicker because we can repair quicker. So in terms of movement, resistance, weight training, this is a great time to start doing that. But not at the beginning of your menstrual cycle, not when you're bleeding, because really you should be resting. But every woman is different. So if I use myself as an example, I bleed for about 4 to 5 days, and I can start my exercise routine, my movement menu from day 4, but I start quite gently. I'll just start applying certain resistance, and when you're doing it right, because when you finish, you've got energy. If you don't have energy, you've pushed yourself too much. And the next day, and this, you can look at this in regards to your work as well. If you've done too much and the next day you feel tired, that's your cue. As we come up to ovulation, again, you've got all of these hormones supporting you. So this is a great time to reach for your goals. On the day of your ovulation, you might find that this is, with regards to movement, when you're going to go for your personal bests. Yeah, you've got the energy to do that. What they also have found is that because of the excess estrogen, or the amount of estrogen in the body, you might injure because it creates a laxity in the joints. So when we look at this, if you are a person that injures or the body, you feel pain in the body, it's not that there's anything wrong with you. There's just all of this estrogen in your body. But I've been with people where they've pushed themselves too far, or they're unaware of what's going on in their body. They injure, and it affects them mentally and emotionally because they feel that they aren't strong enough, and that they've done something wrong, and that they're bad. And so it takes them way back in their goals and their achievements. But once they realize, so I'm sensitive to the amount of estrogen in my body right now, I know that I'm going to injure, I'm going to reduce what I do and work more on mobility and strength. And again, you can apply this with your productivity in work. Because if you do too much in a sense of your work and you get injured through your work, which I think a lot of women that I've worked, that I've coached, have experienced, it takes them way back in their goals and their achievements. It knocks their confidence. So what can you do around ovulation if that's something that happens to you to support you with your productivity? Is this making sense? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a question about what was the period of time when we are more likely to get injured? What season was that?
So this would be your inner summer. So this is ovulation, yeah? So this is roughly around day 13, 14. So if you have a 28-day cycle, which is what they consider the on-point cycle, it's around day 14. But for inner summer, you're talking about day 13, 14, 15, 16, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a time of high estrogen. And so if I talk about the body with regards to you might injure yourself when you do too much, with regards to your work, when you do too much and you trip up and you haven't make a mistake at work, yeah? There's so much energy going on. You do too much, you make a mistake, it knocks your confidence, yeah? It has that same resonance, yeah? So what can you do with regards to maintaining a strong and focused body where you don't trip up? I mean,
it's almost preventative.
Yeah.
Like preventing those things from happening.
Yeah. I mean, I joke with my husband because he comes in sometimes and he's like, oh, I've tripped up today. I'm like, are you on your ovulation? You know, like, what have you done? And what he's seen is that he's doing too much at once. But if you think about it, when there's all that energy there, especially when you are at your desk all day, when I work with women, and especially entrepreneurs, if you are sitting at your desk all day and you've got all of that energy pulsating inside of you and you are not completing with that energy, you think about what's happening there. And then all of a sudden you do all of this stuff because it's all inside of you. And then that's when the mistakes start happening. If you can apply natural movement to your day, I mean, you can't see me, but I'm sitting cross-legged, and generally I sit on the floor. But for women, if you can sit on the floor, right, what you find is you have to move every 5-10 minutes and you change your positioning, yeah? And I've got women to start working in their squat. What you find is that you're actually using your natural body movement to express energy instead of sitting in that chair position, which for some women, not everyone, it can exacerbate emotions, because the way that you sit can put a lot of tension in your pelvis because of a certain muscle, yeah? And I don't know if any of you do yoga, they call the psoas muscle the emotional muscle because it connects from your lower back to it goes over your thigh and into your leg, and it's the only muscle that connects your upper body to your lower body. So it's got a lot of tension there. When we sit in a chair-like position for too long, it restricts and creates tension in that muscle, so that when you go and open up in a yoga class, you find that a lot of women get very emotional, yeah? So sitting here in that position for a long time can impact you mentally, emotionally, and physically. So for a woman, if you can get on the floor and move around, it tends to help emotionally. And that can be a tool that you can use if you're in your ovulation and you are at your desk all day. Just applying natural movement to your natural body.
And this all makes sense to me, and I've definitely got quite emotional in a yoga session before. One of the questions that have come through is, this is quite a lot of information, and she's wondering, how do you recommend we start tracking this? How can we begin if we've never ever delved into this before, in terms of like the seasons and using the seasons?
But one thing that I would recommend is getting an A4, massive A4 diary from the WH or something like that. And I've created a set of questions, and you just check in with your emotions every day. And I mean, I've researched loads of journals, but it never quite supports you in what I found anyway, in tracking all of the emotions, like, what was my habit today? How did I move today? What was my emotional response? What did I crave, like food-wise? All of these things. And you just want to write down these little questions every day. And it will take about 2 to 3 months where you start to see, on day 20, I do this. On day 25, I drink too much. So what can you do to not get all the wine out of your house on day 25? Don't shop for wine on day 25. It's not the right day. But you can start applying strategies that support you, because subconsciously, excuse me, if I'm just going to turn off our music. 1 second. My husband puts it on a timer. Apologies about that. You can apply strategies because unconsciously you've got these strategies for survival in there, and that's why you reach for the wine, because you feel that's helping you. But if by just creating that awareness, you can go, right, I know what's coming, and instead of doing that, perhaps I'm going to take myself outside for a walk. I mean, what researchers found is that if I finish going on the flip side of your follicular, yeah. So for menstruation, I've spoken about the rise in estrogen up until ovulation. Now, from ovulation, there's a bit of a fairground ride going on, because estrogen rises, and then drops again, because progesterone comes in. Now, progesterone is your chill out hormone, yeah, because it's thinking, right, there's a baby coming, we need to start, chilling out, relaxing, and this is something that we tend to fight, right? Because I haven't got time to relax. I mean, I've got 2 kids, I work for myself, I've got to look after my own. Even if you haven't got 2 children, I've got stuff to do. Life has to go on. So again, we start to fight the progesterone, but this is so crucial to understand how important relaxation, the art of relaxation, is your ability to build a strong menstrual cycle. Because if you can't relax, if you can't let down, when you get to ovulation, you're going to be so tired, because you're wired. You're absolutely wired. And this is the fight of our hormones when we don't understand what we should be doing to look after ourselves. So we start to come down. Now, when progesterone comes into play, what we found is that it affects serotonin. And this is our happy hormone, right? And this is why we reach for carbs, because carbohydrates affect our serotonin levels. It helps to bring them up again. But one of the biggest things that I've offered women is that when you start to feel those cravings in that phase, just get outside. Just get outside, because serotonin loves sunlight. It loves daylight. Yeah.
Is that likely to happen, Abi? That's
that's the luteal phase. That's after your ovulation. Yeah, especially so after ovulation, your luteal phase is 2 weeks. Yeah, it's one of the biggest parts of the cycle. So as you come mid luteal phase, that inner autumn, this is when you start to really crave for those carbs and stuff to make you feel good again. But again, we can just think, I know what's happening. It's funny, isn't it? If I know progesterone's kicking in, I know that my serotonin levels are down, that's why I'm reaching for stuff. It's almost like okay, I understand what's going on. So now I can choose the right choice in how to support myself. So just getting out. And what I found is, first thing in the morning for all those early risers, you know, whether you've got just a window, a balcony or a garden, just to stand out for a couple of minutes outside and even if it's not sunny, it's cloudy, you still got the sunlight coming through. It alters that chemistry inside you. It allows you to relax naturally. So this is what's happening on that luteal side. It's all about, it's like the come down, yeah? So that we can enter into that menstruation and trust that it is okay to not do anything for one day. For one day, I'm not going to take anything new on. It's not that you stop. It's that you just don't take anything else on. And I feel that the biggest thing that women have an issue with is asking for help. Now, when I first started doing this, my goodness, when the first day of my bleed, the thought of asking my husband, can you look after, I only had one child then, can you take the reins on Raf? Oh, I feel so guilty. Oh my gosh, I'd be like, oh, he's gonna hate me. And then when I asked him, he was like, oh yeah, okay, fine. So you can see, you know, what you believe to be true. You know, the conditioning from when you was younger of how to survive. And for me, my childhood was very chaotic. It was quite a terrifying childhood in regards to my mum left my dad. My dad was a gangster when I was young. She left him when I was 1. My mum had terrible choice in men. She then met my stepdad and he had a drink and drug problem. And so there was lots of fights and arguments. You know, I'd go to bed at night wondering if I would wake up and my mum would still be alive. So it was a very time. And so my survival technique was that, you know, where's the exits? Because we always had to run. I can't ask for anything because I didn't have the right to ask for anything because I wasn't welcome in that home. And so for me, that trust of feeling safe when I had my period, because your bleed is a memory. Every time you have your menstrual cycle, you are remembering the first time. And for me, it was awful. But through understanding that my bleed is a memory of the first bleed and that all of my conditioning comes out, all of that we hold inside of us as women, yeah? And it resurfaces when we are tired, low on hormones, low on support. You know, it just comes out when you haven't dealt with it before. And so working through that can feel quite terrifying, but once you come out the other side, you start to build this fulfilling relationship with your menstrual cycle and then with your body. Because let's face it, without your body, you cannot experience this wonderful thing called life. If you don't understand the potential of your body, you'll never live your full potential.
Yeah, I was going to say I completely relate to that story. And I think for many of us, we get this angst feeling or it's disgusting, you know, we don't talk about it. And it's sort of this thing that we just got to get over. It's happened. And actually, when I started to kind of bring my awareness to it, appreciate it, it stopped being this disgusting and horrible thing that I've just got to deal with the cramps. And it's really, really hard to describe without kind of getting all woo-woo and spiritual. It's not essentially that, but there is an element to that, right? But it is just about being more in tune, not being in conflict with it, not being something that's happening to you. but something that actually, once you bring awareness to, you can utilize.
Yeah.
We've got a really good question actually about kind of the corporate world and the realities of the corporate world, in terms of in the corporate world, and especially events, where when you relax and when it's busy it isn't dictated by you, it's dictated for you, is the key to getting moving to be at your best. So how would you approach, you know, when our schedules are dictated by us, and when we're busy is dictated, you know, for us? How do we deal?
Well, we are on the precipice of change. I really honestly believe this. You know, there's more information out there now, but it is still a challenge. I do understand that. But your challenge is your choice, yeah? And as a woman, do you feel you have the right to speak up? Yeah. And in the corporate world, I know there's half and half. There are women that are now saying, you know what? I am on my bleed. I won't be doing this. Who can I delegate this to? And they're being supported by that. And then there are the other side where they are too afraid to say anything, and so they continue reinforcing this fear-based relationship with their cycle. But look at when I said earlier about how your bleed is a memory of your first bleed. So what was you conditioned to understand about your health? Yeah, about trust, about asking for support, about reaching out. Because for me, I honestly believe that if you have a comprehensive conversation with managers, HR, they have to appreciate you and your menstrual cycle. They have to, especially now. And I'm more than happy if you want to contact me after this. I'm more than happy to discuss this with you. Jay's going to share some information with you. I've got an online course. It's sold out for the first one. We're just in the midst of it now, but the next one starts in July, and it's all about supporting you in creating the change you need to gain the confidence to live with your menstrual cycle and not fight it. And that's going to change. And once you do that with your menstrual cycle, it's a superpower in your pants. Yeah. It is a superpower in your pants. It just gives you more confidence. It gives you more confidence. It gives you the art of just understanding your body's capabilities. Like I said earlier, there's no need to compare your body to anyone else. And that's one of the biggest things I've taken away from this, is that I used to look at other women and go, oh, look at her body. She's got a great, yeah, look in the mirror, oh, that's not great. And then, now I understand that this body it's amazing. It's an amazing body. All right, it's not 6 foot, and it's not, I don't look like Naomi Campbell or any of those women, but it's mine. It is mine, and I love it, and I'm going to look after it. And to look after it, if that means I've got to ask someone that, you know, I'm on my menstrual cycle and right now work just needs to change slightly. It's not that you're going to turn around and go, I'm not doing any work whatsoever. It's that right now I need more support, please.
Yeah.
And I don't know none of your situations. Yeah, I've only just met you. So I'm not trying to take away from anything that you experience. But what I have learned is that our reality, or what we perceive our reality to be, is not necessarily true. That's hard. But it's even harder when you don't realise where you are with your emotions, because your emotions dictate your reality, and they exacerbate a reality that you might have been conditioned to believe. And it's not true. Like I said earlier, I'm getting all tingly talking about it. We have so many resources now. We're told to believe that we don't have a choice, yeah? And that there's not enough out there. But there is so much information. There's loads of books now. There's loads of people out there, men and women, looking to support women's health. So don't allow your current environment to tell you otherwise. Yeah? Start looking for these resources and supports, because environment dictates so much, but you only see what you believe. Yeah. As soon as you start opening up to more of this, you'll see it's everywhere. There are loads of people out there.
And yeah, I think there's also that there is a lot that we are not in control of, but there is a lot that we are. So if there are periods of time where we know that we've got, you know, we have to do this big meeting, we have to do this presentation, you know, and it's not ideal because it's not in, you know, in our summer period where we're like, woo, confident. But we could make sure that the things that happen around that allow, you know, that self-care, or, you know, making sure that our time 2 hours before that meeting is dedicated to whatever that period of time needs. So there's a lot that's still within our control. And also, as managers and leaders, understanding this, we be the change. We, you know, incorporate this into our leadership styles, into our organizations, into our teams, into our businesses. We may not be in an environment where all this can happen now, but we can start being the change.
Just so a really good point Jake said there. So if you've got a massive meeting and it's, you know, you're coming up to your menstrual cycle, what can you do? Well, that day, don't do anything else. And if you've got to prep for it, fine, but don't do it. That's your focus. It's not that you can't do it. It's about applying these strategies that support you in completing in what you have to do. Yeah. So when you go into this meeting, don't go in there with cups of coffee that are going to make you wired, nervous, and anxious. You know, take in there something that's going to support you. Yeah. Like if you need snacks because you can feel your energy coming down, take snacks in with you, things that are going to look after you. And then after your meeting, you know, some quiet time. Those strategies, what can you do to put in? And then when the next meeting has to come up, you just quickly check your calendar and try and put it in ovulation.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions, any other kind of key reflections that have come up